Hi guys, so in this final video we're going to have a look at using early reflections instead of reverb to put your drums in a space. Now reverb's fantastic, but reverb can also quickly cloud up your mix, especially if you've got a busy track. So using a combination of just kind of general reverb but also delays and also these early reflections I'm going to show you how to use are great for kind of adding different complementary spaces to keep the clarity in your mix. So at the moment I've got all the drums from that same song starter we used for the kick drum just soloed, and they're routed to a bus where we're going to put on some early reflections. So I'm going to use the Valhalla Room plugin, but you can use any plugin where you can basically separate out the early reflections and the reverb tail. Now on the Valhalla Room, with this depth control, we can set a balance between late energy and early energy. Now late energy would just be 100% reverb, and early energy would be 100% early reflections. Now if you're unsure about what early reflections are and reverb and what the difference is between the two, basically when a sound is created in a space, the initial reflections we have off the floor, the walls and the ceiling, the ones that hit you very, very quickly, are known as the early reflections. Now these dictate the kind of space you're in, the size of the space, whereas the reverb is actually the reflectivity of that space. So what's that space made of? How long does the sound decay for? So if you were in a stone room, which was very reverberant, you'd have a longer reverb time than you were in, say, a kind of padded room, which wouldn't be as reverberant. So the early reflections are the initial reflections that hit you in the space, whereas the reverb tail is more the decay of the reverb. Now obviously having a long reverb tail is not really going to work a lot of the time, especially for drums, because it's going to quickly mess up the clarity of the mix, and that's where the early reflections can come in. So let's actually just take these off solo so we can do this in the context of the track. Now I've actually got a plate reverb on the clap, so I'm just going to take that off so we can really focus on this. Now I'm really exaggerating that, but if I mute it, you'll hear that you lose a little bit of presence and depth and also a little bit of width. Now we can experiment with pre-delays as well, to kind of separate out the drum sound and the early reflections. We could also pump these early reflections. So I can put on an LFO tool or whatever sidechain compressor I want and actually have these early reflections pumping away with the drum kit. Now on this area here we can actually determine the size of the early reflection space. So I think it sounds quite good being quite tight there. We can choose to change the diffusion as well. So it's more grainy sounding when we have a low diffusion. Just put this size back again. Now it's often quite a good idea to EQ your reverbs and kind of spatial effects to stop them taking up too much space. What I'm actually going to do, I'm actually going to take that off and I'm going to roll off the high frequencies. A lot of time I find that leaving the low frequencies in on something like an early reflections and also on reverb can actually add a lot of kind of low end presence to your track. You've got to be careful with reverb, definitely, but especially with early reflections, having that kind of little bit of reverberant energy on the kick drum can actually add a lot of weight to your track. Okay, I'll bring that plate back in again. So that way we've added a space to the drums and created a little bit more front-back depth, which is what reverb and spatial effects are great at doing. But we haven't clouded up the mix. So if I show you again, if I bring in some reverb, I'm able to maintain more clarity. Now, there's nothing wrong with using reverb, and a lot of the time I'll use a combination of early reflections and reverb, like I've done here. So the clap's got the plate setting on it. But by not having reverb on all the drums, and by just using an early reflections program instead, we can actually hear that reverb on the clap a lot better, which is great because it, again, allows us to keep the clarity in the mix. Okay, so I hope you found some of these techniques useful and you can use them in your own production. Thanks a lot for watching.